winner of the Edward R. Murrow Award for Best Newscast. You're watching NBC 15 News.
Our message is it starts at home. It starts with your parents, right? If parents are taking care of their children and raising them to keep them out of trouble, right? Then we don't have this issue in the first place.
Bingo right there. We need to go back to old school parenting like it was when we were growing up, and that's one thing that we're talking about if you're just joining us. We don't have a lot of time, so we're going to try to fit everything in a short amount of time. And gentlemen, Chief Prine, you said, all three of you have said it starts in the home.
Absolutely.
And that's what we've got to do. What can be done to reach these parents to say, you can't blame the police. They're not there to raise your kids, but they're going to discipline them if they cut a fool in the streets. You can't blame the school, because guess what? They're not babysitters. They're there to teach. What can we do?
Well, I'll be frank with you. I'll just lead off and tell you, I grew up in a single family home, but I had a very strong mother and a very strong grandfather. You know, it's great to have kids involved in things, but parents, and I think Josh, you said it, you need to be intentional. But be intentional about their whereabouts. Be cognizant of what they're involved in. Social media is one of the worst problems for all of us because it grabs our attention. And meanwhile, while we're inundated with social media, the kids are over there and they're left to their own devices to decide what's right or wrong in their own lives.
That's one thing that we do.
The thing is, Scripture teaches or gives instructions to parents to do this. Train up the child in the way that he or she should go. And when they get older, they won't depart from it. So I think the onus of responsibility has to start with the parent. Parents, be a parent. Yeah. This is not the time for you to try to live your best life. You have to be totally committed to the upbringing of your children so that we can teach them good morals. It starts at the home. If you go back and you look in the Bible, the first thing that the Lord created, it wasn't a church, it wasn't, a bureaucracy, it wasn't government, it was a family. And that family structure needs to come back. And if we are training up our children and what they should do, now, operative word should. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean every child will do the right thing, because we all make mistakes. But if they have that structure initially, then all the other community and outlets that we have, like the school, like the police department, like the churches, can come alongside and reinforce what's being taught in the home.
Yeah, and Jay, you were about to say you work with kids.
Yeah, and I just think, first off, I just think it's important that we also put this out there to parents. We're not all going to get it right. I'm a dad of 3 girls, and I mess up all the time. But one thing I do know is that when I have answers, I have questions, I have concerns, I seek help, I seek assistance, right? And there are outlets, there are classes and places that can help you identify ways to better communicate with your kids, better serve your kids, for lack of a better term. So. One of the things I do believe that in order to be wise, you have to seek wisdom, right? And some of us right now, we're just not in that space.
And I'm going to just add my little 2 cents in from what I've seen with my kids out in the community. And I was a single mom for a while myself as well. So it's tough. Yeah. I know, trying to raise kids on yourself, especially when you have more than one child. But, stop playing games. Don't try to keep your dad away from that kid, because kids need a father. They need a mother. Don't try to be friends with your kids.
Be a parent.
Be a parent.
Be a parent.
Be a tough parent too. Don't fight with the schools because they're trying to discipline your kids. Don't cry, I've been hurt, because the police are having to discipline your kids. Be that parent. Yeah. It makes all the difference in the world. Now, we were going back to mentoring. I know we had to cut you off when we were talking about the work, because you're really big with working on dads on campus, but we can't wait to the high school. I know that your church also works with the elementary school, and that's something people need to realize. Right. Get the kids before they start even the problems when they're small.
Absolutely. We're grateful that we have partnerships with elementary schools. We also have another church partner that helps us with one of our elementary schools in particular. But yes, getting in there at the ground level. And when last time we went to the Partners in Education breakfast at the elementary school, the principal there said, the biggest challenge is if we can get our parents to read to our children. I mean, that reading opens up their imagination. It gives them something to think about, but it's that one-on-one interaction time. If parents want to know how to connect with your children, find their favorite book, introduce them to a book, put the cell phones down, turn the TVs off, just say, hey, look, we're going to read this book together. And that is one of the biggest things. And don't get caught up in the reading activity. It's the part that she was driving home was, it's time spent with your parent. Indeed. And that time right there is always precious.
And that knowledge kids need, and it starts there. We start losing our kids in the 3rd and 4th grade.
That's right.
They need that. We're going to go to break real quick. We'll be back in just a moment.
Just think about grief over and over again and witnessing traumatic death, such as gunshot wounds and things that are happening right in front of them, sometimes in their own homes. How does your brain go from seeing someone shot or having a family member shot and killed, and then go about your regular life as if nothing happened?
Good point there. That was Eunice Mingo, who is a local therapist, and she was saying that a lot of these children who commit crime suffer from PTSD, some type of trauma that they've experienced themselves in their lifetime. So they have triggers that makes them want to pick up a gun and want to turn to violence. Is there help? And I guess, Chief Prine, I'm ask you this first with the city. Do we know if there's any type of therapy or help for these kids?
So I will have to punt that over to Josh because he's in charge of the strategic planning.
Yes,
okay.
Indeed, there is. So right now, we just developed an initiative called the Whole Family Initiative, right? And it's comprehensive case management. We have the victim advocates who are housed in the Office of Strategic Initiatives. So when there are instances of crime or violent crime, these individuals, they respond to the scene and to the family, and they provide immediate services, whether that's counseling, psychosocial therapy, and then we also have community partners like Alto Point, Lifelines Counseling that provide counseling and victims services as well. So there's a lot of services out there when it comes to counseling that's just not utilized, and it's because typically mental health issues have always been taboo, especially in the African American community. So we have to get past that, right? Because we all have some level of trauma that we're dealing with, and it's a matter of addressing that so that we're not operating in crisis mode and survival mode, and then we can't really process and have, proper conflict resolution when the time occurs. And so
it's very important that you get that help, and that's when a lot of times people also need to learn need to turn to the church, because the church is a building for healing.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be perfect to walk into a church.
No, absolutely not. I admire one of the churches in our local area, right? When you pass on the interstate, that has a sign that says, "No perfect people." And that's an awesome message because we are all hurting. We all have some form of struggles we deal with. There's things that we've dealt with from our past, and that's where our church doors need to be open, not in judgment but in healing. The church is a hospital, and we invite those families. We say, look, there are all kind of levels and classrooms and teachings that we have for your children, for adults. Because sometimes the issue is the children are going through traumatic experiences because their parents have gone through traumatic experiences. So we need to get to the root of it and the total healing for the whole family. And those services are available. Our church doors are always open, churches all around, and I would encourage anyone, connect
with a therapist, with the clergy. We're going to go to break again. I know the time is wrapping up really quick. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We're targeting the violence. Chief Prine, I want to go right to you because we don't have much time, about leadership and all leaders stepping up.
So at the end of the day, my philosophy is this: we need to come together, Kim. The leadership in Mobile needs to come together for one common cause, and that's for a safe community, to save our children in our community. We need to learn to put ethnicity, culture, and all of our different issues aside and say, hey, we're going to stand with the police department. If the police department turns out to be wrong, we'll hold the police department accountable, but until such time has happened, we're standing in solidarity with our law enforcement officers to ensure that everybody has a great quality of life in our community.
And you think about it, and you see it at a movie at the ending, and that's basically what you got to look at it. All the leaders coming out, all the community coming out and standing up against the gangs, against the violence. I could name several movies here, but it's reality. That's what we really need to do, because if we all stand up together, then they'll see that they can't break that wall.
Let me just say this: leadership is not just having a seat at the table when times are good. Real leadership is having a seat at the table and having the courage to stand up even when those decisions are not popular.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming. We could talk on this an hour, but we have 10 seconds and they're telling me to wrap up. So thanks for joining us for NBC 15 News at 5. If you want to watch this again, go to our website, mynbc15.com. Nightly News is next.